that a free press is the most effective way to check political power. Vladimir Putin knows that too. And that's why reporting the news in Russia can be a very dangerous job.
Veronika Borovic runs a media conglomerate called Top Secret, one of the few independent media companies left in Russia. Her company, among other things, sells programs to all the Russian TV channels. But since Putin came to power in Russia, all of the main television channels now answer directly to the Kremlin. There is never a mention of political opposition figures, never a wisp of criticism of the administration.
They don't even bother to call us. They just take out from our story whatever they want, just cut it out, and later we see on the screen a story which is just, you know, sometimes it changes the whole idea. And they say, okay, if you're not happy, okay, goodbye.
That's exactly what one channel did earlier this year, said goodbye, because a story Veronika's company produced about the president of Georgia, who is not on the Kremlin's friendly list, was too balanced.
They said, no, guys, this is not going to work. You have to go and tell that he's an evil person in everything. We said, but look, this is not right.
Veronika knows all too painfully well what happens to journalists in Russia who stand up to authorities. Her husband, Artyom Borovic, openly criticized Putin's war in Chechnya and alleged Russian security services were behind apartment bombings in Russia, which killed 300 people.
Many, many times we had problems, like, you know, our car would be pushed by 2 other cars when we would be on our way to the country house.
March 2000, Borovic was killed in a mysterious plane crash at a Moscow airport.
And I still don't know what happened. I just know that it was not just an accident.
They say that Russia is probably one of the most dangerous countries in the world for journalists after a place like Iraq.
Well, yes, it's true. We have a list of people, of journalists who died during the last year in Russia or in former Soviet Republic countries. And the list is long. There could be, you know, more than 30 names every year. Can you imagine?
No.
So it's really difficult for journalists here.
We wanted to ask someone in the Kremlin about freedom of the press. We were referred to one of Putin's top economic advisors. Some call Arkady Dvorkovich a gray cardinal of the Kremlin.
There's been severe control of freedom of the press in the country.
That's not true.
Arkady, it's absolutely true.
But look at the internet, look at the newspapers, and look at the at TV programs in the, well, not in the first 2 TV channels.
That's right, he admitted. Astonishingly, the 2 main channels don't broadcast freely.
Those are your national television channels. Those are the most influential media you have.
We have 30 million who are using internet every day.
He's right about the internet. Opinions and criticism of the government now appear to have gone underground in Russia. Take the internet's popular Live Journal, for instance. Once American-based, it was bought out last year by a Russian entrepreneur. Co-owner Andrew Paulson runs Live Journal from offices in the center of Moscow now, instead of from San Francisco. Paulson says 95 of the top 100 bloggers in Russia use Live Journal. A lot of it is political opinion and expression.
Why are you not more on the Kremlin's radar, do you think? If it is one of the few places that people can come, criticize the administration, criticize the ever-popular President Putin, even if they chose to.
Well, I think that it's very much like a Red Square full of people. And some are yelling and screaming, some are jumping up and down, some are dancing, some are performing musical instruments. But in fact, the result is just a very, very large noise. And I don't think that it's a particularly irritating noise.
Masha Gaidar is an opposition candidate arrested in protests against the government last year. Her blog on Live Journal includes links to a video where she depicts Putin as the Antichrist. Gaidar says she fears the authorities but believes she has to speak out.
They're guilty for censorship on TV. They're guilty of repression, political repression. They're guilty of falsification of election. They're guilty of many things.
I think that there have been some excessive controls, which are absolutely not needed.
Alexei Pushkov, who hosts his own weekly TV show, usually defends the Kremlin. And he is now predicting that new President Dmitry Medvedev may ease some restrictions on the press.
I think the debate on issues of national importance will be more open. I think it's good for the country, and I think Medvedev understands that.
But the question may be, what does Vladimir Putin understand? The woman who believes her husband died for criticizing Putin's military adventures says it's obvious the strongman doesn't tolerate bad press.
You don't see any stories about President Putin in a bad light here ever, that's for sure.
Of course not. No, come on.
Dana Lewis reporting from Russia. So what do Russia's growing power and its hubris mean for the United States? Joining us now, Ilan Berman, Vice President of the American Foreign Policy Council, and Peter Brooks, a Senior Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Peter, let me start with you. Are we headed for another Cold War with Russia?
It's not quite clear at this point. Relations between the United States and Russia have certainly gone from chilly to frosty, and they could even go further. Just the other day, the Russian foreign minister asked the United States to choose between Russia and Georgia, and Secretary of State Condi Rice basically said the United States would side with Georgia. So it's not quite clear. Hopefully we're not heading in that direction. One was enough, but it is possible that relations will sink even further.
Yeah, and yet, Ilan, we see this power grab unfolding by Russia, not just in Georgia, but elsewhere. And at what point do we think Russia will draw the line? In other words, how much is enough for Russia?
What we have to understand is that the current conflict isn't really just about South Ossetia. It's not even really just about Georgia. It's about the future borders of the Russian Federation. And if we don't respond assertively, diplomatically, economically, then what we're looking at is this as the start of a cascade of these types of provocations.
But how do we do that, Ilan? How do we draw the line?
Russia can be excluded from the G8. That's certainly an avenue. Russian potential membership in the WTO could be reconsidered. But there's a lot of other things, including, for example, greater strategic cooperation with countries like Poland and the Czech Republic on missile defense, greater cooperation with countries in the Caucasus on NATO partnership that could send a real signal to the Russians that these countries are within Europe and the West's ambit, and we're willing to extend our security to them.
Peter, what of the prospect of winning over the hearts and the minds of the Russians?
I've had many questions from people about what are the Russians hearing about what's going on in Georgia, and it's not very good. They're hearing what the Russian government wants them to hear, so getting to the people is difficult. In this day and age with the internet and other methods, there are possibilities, but there are some real challenges there.
Sure are. Ilan Berman, Peter Brooks, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Well, that's our program. I'm Megyn Kelly. For more on Russia and the war in Georgia, you can log on to foxnews.com. And while you're online, send me an email. Tell me what you think. The address is fncspecials@foxnews.com. For all of us here at Fox, thanks for watching.
I have a full day. I can only give you 5 minutes. Chris?